Good evening and welcome to Monday night segment of the Horsefly Chronicles radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Philip Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We will also have to do a few things in order to participate. Go over to the YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio, and get into chat. Subscribe if you haven't. You can go into all of the United Public Radio Facebook stations, Twitch, SoundCloud, Podbeam. You can also go into the UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo on Facebook. I can only respond to your comments on our YouTube page on UFO Paranormal Radio. And if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. So today we have a great guest that we're really looking forward to. So please let's welcome Kat Silvia to the show. Kat is a psychic medium, gothic photographer, and writer. She's also a very talented artist and helps people who are in the need of help in the paranormal. Kat's cemetery and graveyard photography is so beautiful and meaningful to her that she put it all into a book. It's called Admiring Death, and it's been published by Perfect Trust Productions LLC. So you can go right over to that website. That's perfecttrustproductions.com. And you can read all about Kat's book over there and also on Amazon.com to purchase the book. So let's welcome Kat to the show.
Welcome.
Yay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on. All right, so on this edition of Horsefly Chronicles Radio, Julie's reading that the graveyard and the pictures. Let's talk about that. How did that start?
So the cemeteries, the fascination started as a little girl. My best friend from nursery school, who I went through basically all of elementary school, started talking about how her father went to cemeteries and he took her with him. And I don't know why, I just was so fascinated by it. So that's how the initial cemetery fascination started. I drove my mother crazy because I wanted to go to a cemetery at 5 years old. So she did take me to my great-grandparents' cemetery and to show me the graves. And I do talk about that in the beginning of the book where I was a little bit disappointed that they had, flatter headstones, but my family was poor and they would not have been able to afford, a raised headstone. And, just being in the paranormal, I have always enjoyed cemeteries. So I've taken pictures there. I have very old photographs of some pictures of cemeteries that I took when I was in that college course. When I was 23 years old, I shot with a 35 millimeter and developed my own film. And then after that course, I never picked up photography again. And it wasn't until my pregnancy with my third child actually got me to realize that I hadn't really been doing too much that was really making me happy. I did join a paranormal group when I was in Arizona. When I first got out there, I didn't really enjoy it. There was a lot of drama and I'm not really into drama. So
Yeah.
I had decided at that point, I would do my paranormal stuff on my own. But I was missing my art so much.
Right. Okay. So I want to focus first on the cemetery because that's intriguing.
Mhm.
Usually we're drawn to certain things, whether it's through adolescence or you get old and you're drawn to it. So you're psychic, and being in a cemetery as a psychic, were you able to hear voices from the other side?
So I do. A lot of times it's just different. The energy is different according to how the cemetery is taken care of. So I've been in cemeteries where I call anybody who's passed on before me ancestors. So I can hear them if they're happy. And like I had said in the book, if the cemeteries aren't well maintained, or if there's ritualistic activity that's taken place, there's a more palpable energy of anger in these cemeteries. Also, I believe the children come to me a lot because I am a mother of 3. They come a lot because they're the ones that aren't visited the most. They're not visited because a lot of times, obviously, that is very hard to go through a death of a child. So often they're just buried and that's it. Usually the families do not continuously go visit the children, which is very sad. So that is
Right.
one reason they come to me. And the next reason, which is very common, the footstones were confused. Actually, the headstones were confused as footstones. So a lot of those have been removed in older cemeteries, which that is another reason why children will come to me, because they really feel very unheard when that takes place.
So when you say you hear voices, is it through audio or is it through the mind's vibrational thoughts? Like, how are you getting this?
So I get thoughts. I get both. I get a mixture of both. So I am clairaudient. I do hear phrases a lot, and I do. I guess I do feel like a certain energy, but I do get phrases.
Okay, so you get phrases, you take pictures in the cemetery. If you see a tombstone, let's just say you come across a tombstone of a child, right? Is the child there, or is it because it's part of your perception and belief that makes the child there as a manifestation through the mind?
I think it's actually a little bit of both, because I feel like they pick up on my energy as a mother, that I'm able to connect.
That is true.
And I don't really feel like, I don't think they're necessarily like hanging around, waiting for someone, but I feel like they will, because they recognize through me that they are going to get heard. So I do think it's a mixture of both.
It's interesting, and I believe you because I've had my own experiences in the cemetery. And it's interesting because, you know, look, there's a lot of different theories on ghosts and spirits and they're going through the other side. And then some people say, well, why would they be in the cemetery? And I believe that it's through our thoughts that somehow they're able to manifest in a way through their dimension into our realm. Just like going to a haunted location, like a haunted home or a building. And do I believe that Mr. Jones, who died 100 years ago, is still there because a paranormal investigator says he's there? No, I don't believe that. But do I believe that the placement energy of that guy who's put so much into his home was there? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
And that becomes like a residual energy, which is interesting because sometimes that residual energy is intelligent to the now.
Yes.
As in, you're talking now, can you hear me now? And you're getting a response of now. So that's also very interesting. And a lot of people I talk to find that, even myself, find that cemeteries are very peaceful.
They generally are. And I think what you just said on a quantum, that's how I believe this works. I think this is the best way to understand it, but it would be the quantum physics level. And that's why I say to people, you do get a lot of people in the paranormal world say that cemeteries aren't haunted. And I do talk about that in my book. I think I kind of disagree with putting absolutes anywhere. I don't think cemeteries, like you said, are haunted per se, but when you have somebody like me, or you have, an investigation team, I believe if you were to go to a cemetery, it would be very likely you would get an EVP, even if it wasn't deemed haunted. Like you said, they can communicate from the other side or whatever realm or dimension they're in our now, like you just said. So I absolutely agree with it. It is a spiritual portal, in my opinion. I've done a lot of research. Troy Taylor is one of my favorites, but he does write a great article on cemeteries and how Native Americans actually picked spots they knew that were closest to the creator. And then they also say white settlers did the same thing, but inadvertently. So while I don't believe all of them are quote unquote haunted, I do believe that if you were looking for some type of spiritual activity, you could possibly get that.
I agree with you. I've had an encounter years ago, back in the early 90s, and a friend of mine, we lost contact, and I found out through another friend that she had passed away in her early 20s of cancer. And we decided, hey, she was into some spiritual stuff, and we went on the Ouija board and see if we can contact her, and say, where are you? Because we don't know what cemetery that you were put in. And within 10 minutes, she told us where she was buried.
Wow.
And not only that, she told us how to find her plot because it didn't have a stone. She said that the family couldn't afford it, but there's a wooden cross that they put up temporarily, the cemetery. So we went there the next day, me and my friend, and she gave us directions. And she also told us to bring a pack of cigarettes because she liked to smoke. And so we're looking, and it's a huge cemetery in Staten Island, New York, and we can't find it. And all of a sudden, the wind is pushing really hard against us. Now, in big cemeteries, it can be windy because it's an open field. But it was just an ironic thing that was like a force against us. So something told me through the mind, walk against the wind and you will find it. So we're walking for a few minutes, and I turn to my right in this huge cemetery called the Resurrection, and there's a cross, 3 rows in. And as soon as we get to the grave, a gust of wind, and I felt it.
Yeah.
I felt her, and he felt her. And when he put the pack of cigarettes on the grave, all of a sudden the memories were coming back.
Wow.
And oh yeah, it was fascinating. And that night we went back on the Ouija board to talk to her, and she's like, "Thank you." And I had questions for her. I had questions about that because, like, we're talking about the cemetery, and that's placement energy. That's where the body is. And I think that's where one of the strongest points of the person can be when it's left over, unless you're, what do you call that? When you're, they torch you.
And they what?
When they put you into the, the ashes.
Oh, the
the cremation.
Yeah.
I was losing that for a second, but what she did explain to me from the other side, and I was a hardcore skeptic. I found a hard time believing in any of this. So I took my hands off of the planquette and I blindfolded my friend. But she talked just as if she would talk verbally. She made the planquette move onto the letters as if it was her motions. She was Spanish, and she says, "Look, I'm going to tell you something. The only difference is, for me, it's like you just can't see me, but I'm still here. I still watch over my child." And the child was like 3 or 4 years old at that time. "I still roam the earth." And she goes, during the way the stars align is when our energy is stronger and you can communicate with us from the other side. And I was like, wow. So she picked that up. I picked it up, and I was really mesmerized by that whole experience. I will never forget it, because that was 100% true, validating evidence that, hey, the other side is talking to me, and they wanted me to go and find their grave. And I did, and we said our prayer. So, I believe that what you're doing is when you go to the cemetery, you're psychically being pulled to the cemetery. Whether it's run down, unfortunate, or
Yeah.
whether it's like really taken care of and you're feeling those emotions of maybe sadness because it's run down. Um, it's fascinating. And Julie, you had an experience in the cemetery a few years ago.
Yes, and I was actually with Vanessa Hogel.
Oh, yeah.
It was I will never forget this. We were looking for a grave. We were looking for Jessica Swagger's grave, and we couldn't find her. And I remember that she had Down syndrome. So in death, she was still like a young. She was still like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old child. So she couldn't direct us there. She was throwing stones at us.
Oh, wow.
And I'm getting the chills right now. She was throwing stones at us, and I will never forget that. To this day, it was
Could you
very,
imagine a
very,
spirit throwing stones? Not to hurt you, but to like,
no, it was actually very sweet. And you
Yeah.
could ask Vanessa this, and I mean, she was used to that stuff, but
Yeah.
me, I was like, oh my goodness, she's throwing stones at us to get our attention, to like direct us to where she is.
That's so cool.
Oh, it was.
so Kat, let's talk about the pictures in the cemetery. Have you caught any apparitions?
I have not. I'm always waiting for the day that I I catch something, because I basically I'm in awe of anybody who is able to capture, a physical apparition like the one they caught. I believe it was in the early '90s in Bachelor's Grove. Like I would love to catch something like that, but not yet.
Okay, um, so I read that up in adolescence also, like at a young age, you had experience.
I did. I mean, I have a photographic memory, and I can remember certain situations, whether it was at, my Nana's house. I had experiences in my own house. I wouldn't say that it was haunted, but I have had spirits contacting me since, I mean, I guess I would say before age 5.
And what do they tell you?
I think, like back then, I didn't, I really didn't get like a specific message. I would have like spirits appear to me. There is one episode, I had to have been really young. I was still in a diaper. I remember I was crawling up my stairs in the house. I could hear somebody that sounded like my father calling for me, and I heard that a lot. But my father worked second shift, and he wasn't home, and I knew he wasn't home. I had also validated this strange memory once with my mother, because when I was crawling up the stairs, I was wearing, I had little moccasins on, and she said I did indeed have a pair of those. I don't really know what to make of those memories back then. Like I said, I didn't really know what it was. I was definitely afraid of it. I did hear, like I said, I heard my dad a lot calling my name, but he wasn't home. So I'm not really sure what that was to this day.
Well, usually that's kind of creepy actually, because that's the spirit.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're unfriendly spirits creating the voice of somebody in the physical world that you
Yeah.
know and love. And I've dealt with that years ago. That's a little
we dealt with it here too,
Yeah.
with the mimicking.
That's
I
creepy.
call it, yeah, that's what I call it. I call it mocking or mimicking. And I kind of had forgotten about
It's
that.
actually really scary.
I
It's
was
creepy.
scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But your abilities as a psychic, and it sounds like, you've had different types of experiences. Have you ever had sleep paralysis?
I have had sleep paralysis. So I call the age of 23 my haunted summer. So my uncle and I, he lived in a house in Charlestown, Rhode Island. It was an old 1700s farmhouse. He was taking care of it for an elderly lady. They wanted to keep the house in the family trust. So he took care of the house, and she moved to Michigan with, her daughters. And there was one night where him and I, we went to the nightclub because he's gay, and I used to go to the gay bars with him. And I swear I was not drunk this night or anything like that, but came home, went to bed very, very late in the wee hours of the morning. And shortly after I had fallen asleep, I could not move. I could not talk. And somebody was shaking the bed like uncontrollably. And what felt was like it was 10 minutes. It probably was only 2. I tried to scream, for my uncle, but I calmed myself down because when I was 17, I went to a psychic for the first time in my life. And actually my uncle did take me. And one of the things that she had said to me that really stuck is like, you cannot feed these energies fear because that's what causes it to get worse. So I did calm down, and I have used this practice ever since I was 17. So I wasn't afraid, but I had woken up that morning and I said, Uncle Ricky, oh my God, I think I had basically the old hag experience. And he said, you know what? I think I had that too. And the most significant thing that did happen in that house was, so basically a few weeks later, he had that old hag thing happen to him too. He slept with all the lights on after. And then like a week later, we were both in the kitchen. It was in the morning. And on the wall of the kitchen, because it's an old house, there was a drawer. And I swear it like this drawer shook a little, and then slowly it opened up all the way. And he goes, Kat, you've got to be kidding me. He's like, this drawer has been stuck since I've lived in this house, and it's been 5 years.
Wow.
Huh, look at that.
So that was probably, one of my more, significant paranormal events really to happen to me on a physical level.
Let's talk about dreams. You ever go into dreams and you see people in the dreams that you never seen in the physical world?
I do. So I do lucid dream. I wouldn't say like a ton, but yes, there is one dream that stands out that I remember talking to an older man, telling him, I know I'm here and I know I'm talking to you, but I don't know you. And he said, that's okay. So that will happen to me from time to time.
Okay.
And do you feel like at any point in your life you've had out-of-body experience?
Out-of-body experience?
Yes.
Yes. I have had several dreams where I am walking in the woods barefoot and I can feel every leaf, every rock under my feet.
And where do you think you are?
Usually it is at my old house. I'm in the woods there.
And that's fascinating, and I believe it because I ask you these questions because I've also experienced it. Some people say that sleep paralysis is a form of a medical condition. I'm going to tell you straight out, it's not. I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to tell you from my own experience in Metuchen, New Jersey, back in the year of 2003. I'm in the bedroom, and I'm laying down, and all of a sudden, I feel like I'm getting the pins and needles to my body, and I can't move. The kids and my wife are watching TV in the living room. I'm trying to say hello, and nothing's hearing me. And all of a sudden, the bedroom door shuts from nothing. And I go into, I can't move.
Yeah.
I cannot move. I can't move anything. I could barely breathe. And from that point, I went right into a dream state. So now I lose control of the body. I'm in a dream state. And in a dream state, I'm pulled somewhere else. Like an out-of-body experience, like we're being pulled into a different realm of reality. There are some beliefs, and I got to be honest with you, I think I believe it as well, that some of the dreams we have may not just be through the subconscious mind and the conscious, but we're leaving. The soul is leaving the physical and going on a journey with other people that we came in a physical world with in soul groups. Because it just so happens I have the same friends on the other side that they don't even exist in the physical world. They don't exist, but they're there on the other side, like waiting for me when I go into a dream state. And we go on these adventures and we're somewhere else. And it's like a imitation of the reality of the physical world.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that Nicolas Cage movie where he lives two lives.
Yes, another movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
You see that movie?
Yeah.
He
I can't
actually
remember the
lives
name.
two lives. He's got two different families and two
Yeah.
different lives.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these movies and what we deal with here in the physical world, there's some truths to. I mean,
Yeah.
I say to myself when I wake up, and this is a lot like, well, where was I?
Mhm.
Because I don't know these people in my dream, but I know
Yeah.
them in the dream.
Yeah.
And I felt like the dream is so real because what you said, you could feel the ground and so it's like as if you create the reality through the dream of existence and you go through a parallel universe
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that it does exist and it is real. It's fascinating. So back to sleep paralysis, I believe it. Now, are there medical conditions that can do similar things? Of course, I'm not a doctor, but of course. But in this case, my case, and your case, and God, I've interviewed so many different people that no, we were held down. And that some of the belief is incubus, succubus, right?
Yeah.
That these are
Yeah.
the entities that are responsible for some of the sleep paralysis, where the demon's holding you down, and it goes into
Something else.
something else, like the movie The Entity.
Ugh.
I don't know if you ever seen that movie, but she was held down and unfortunately she was raped. That was back in the 70s.
That was a horrible movie.
That was based on a true story. And
Mhm.
so some of these entities, that's why I ask certain questions as I'm doing these interviews to see if it correlates with other people's stories of what you actually dealt with. So now let's talk about dark shadows. You ever see any?
Um, there was a couple of times I feel like I may have, but it's just one of those things that seems like it goes into like the peripheral, when you kind of question yourself, did I really see that?
Yeah.
It's not something I've seen a lot. I think I have my own suspicions on that too.
Which are?
um Sometimes I think that people who are living a lower vibrational life, those entities and energies may be more attracted to them.
Ah, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
True.
I'm not afraid of any of this stuff. I have been confirmed and by many talented people that I do walk in both worlds. I walk in light and dark, and I do think that might be 90% of us in the paranormal world.
Mhm.
I tend to think that is a reason why we don't fit the mold in metaphysical communities too. We're not
Yes.
afraid of light and darkness. However, I don't think these beings appear to people who walk more in light. And that's just how I feel about that.
We're all dark here.
Or dark, yeah.
Let's talk about deja vu. Any experiences where you felt like you've been somewhere?
All the time. I am almost 90% positive that I had a past life in Pomfret, Connecticut. There's places, I have deja vu, like, hey, I feel like I've already just done this already, like a Groundhog Day. But there's places that I feel that there's something in my heart, especially coming back to the East Coast and now living in the state, where I feel like I have had a past life in before.
Wow.
And you feel like you've been somewhere and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, reincarnation.
I have a question. How did your family react to you having these gifts? Did it run in your family, or were they didn't want to talk about it?
So it's a little bit of both. It does run on my mother's side. However, she did not recognize this as an ability. I was not well received in my family for having these gifts, especially by my mother, who had a very strict Catholic upbringing. This was all new to her. This is stuff most baby boomers have never thought of a day in their life. And it's a really hard thing, I think, for a parent. Because I mean, now this is the norm.
Yeah.
You know, people are talking about this all the time. It wasn't talked about really in the 50s and the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I think this stuff really started making an emergence, you know, with the Conjuring house in the 70s. But before that, this was just not something people talked about. My mother was very upset, you know, especially when I started talking about ghosts and my interest with it. You know, she was a little bit baffled, I would say, by the cemeteries. But once I started talking about ghosts, she was very upset.
Yeah.
My father, not as much, because, you know, even though he was raised a Catholic, he had no real tie to it. I mean, he had stopped going to church basically after, you know, my parents got married. So it wasn't, you know, a big deal. My brother did have gifts. He did choose to basically denounce them, and he was successful. He can't even watch a paranormal movie trailer. He has to shut the TV off. But he was, you know, growing up, he was being plagued by a spirit. So I think, you know, my grandfather, you know, my grandmother's father was a full-blooded Irish man right off the boat. I tend to think that is probably where the abilities came from. We all have the ability to basically look at somebody right away, and I can, you know, I can just get a read on that person. And you know, the times that I've gone against my instincts to step away from the person, where that's when I would get burned. And, you know, like I said, ironically, that is the gift my mother has. My grandmother had it. You know, my aunt has it. But I don't think they recognized it as, you know, like a psychic intuition.
Yes, and that's really hard for a child too, when you're going through this and you're seeing these things, and then, like you said, back in those days, they just dismissed it, and you know, it's hard for kids. Even now, I mean, people still do dismiss them, and you know, it's hard to be a kid and have to go through
It
all
is
that.
hard. And I teach my own kids, you know, I don't tell them that ghosts don't exist. In fact, my husband and I did the opposite, but we
Yeah.
instead talk about ways to protect themselves. You know, and that's, you know, another reason I have stepped out of, you know, investigation, is that I really feel strongly, because you never know what you're getting into. I feel very strongly that at this point, I don't really want to expose the kids to a lot of this yet. Now, I have all three of them are empaths for sure, especially my daughter. But I feel at this point, this is as far as I want it to go for right now.
Yes. Okay. I can definitely understand that. I mean, you know, you go on investigations and you don't know, you know, the truth is you don't know what you're going to bring home.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth. It really is. It's
Yeah, the attachments,
hard.
you don't know what's, you know, I tell
Yeah.
people like paranormal investigating, it can be fun, but yet dangerous.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have seen unfortunate events happen to people
Yeah.
during some of the provoking that they've done. So I said, don't provoke, don't provoke. You'll regret it. You know,
Yep.
I always say that the spiritual world, there is no watch, there's no time. And just because you
Mhm.
say, well, if the spirit's not affecting me now, I can do what I want.
Yeah.
I hate to
Exactly.
break the news to you, but it could be next week, next
Yep.
day, next year. It will retaliate. And
Yeah.
I've seen that, and there is no coincidence. That's a fact.
Yeah. No, I agree
So
with you.
always treat the other side with respect, love, and light. And if you feel like you're in the world of darkness because a lower vibration entity demon is around, which is very rare, but it does happen, it's best to try to tune it out of your mind, and like changing a channel on the radio, put good thoughts and vibration and play happy music versus feeding into that,
Right.
showing the fear. Because once you show the fear, that pinhole of darkness will open up into your own life. And then if you have an alcohol, drug abuse, any kind of an addiction or weakness, it will tear you down. And I have
Yes.
seen that over and over again. there's a fine line, and you got to be careful. And the ultimate word is respect the other side, as if you respect the people you love in this world. And if you feel uncomfortable, walk away. Because there's attachments and there's things that, we hear these stories, The Conjuring, Amityville Horror, and how people are taking over. And they say, well, it started with the voices in the head. And look, I asked you in the beginning of the show, how, as a psychic, a lot of psychics, they can hear the voice, not through audible, but through the mind's vibrational. And that's how they know to get in, right?
Yeah.
The entities also know how to get in. Where there's good, there's light, where there's love, there's dark, and they'll know how to get into that. And if they get in because you let them in,
right away,
they can tear you down just as quick, and then tear everybody down around you and isolate you. So paranormal investigating, again, it can be fun, exciting, but you got to be careful what you're doing and never ever provoke. So if you had to do an investigation, which you haven't done, like you said, you really don't do much now, but what do you like to use to validate your own abilities or any kind of equipment?
I like my own abilities because I'm not really technologically savvy. I do like EVPs, but I am with you in the fact that I think any divination device or method, I think you still have to be careful of it. So I kind of always ask, I do a blessing and I ask for permission. I just, like you said, you have to treat the people, the spirits, you have to treat it with respect. I don't believe in any sort of provocation because I do know that will lead people into trouble. I'm not a trusting person, so I don't take a spirit's word for it that say, especially they're a child. I really am very, very careful of that. I think they can prey on sympathies. And I actually am really happy that you brought up when people are weak, like with addictions and drugs, alcohol, because that can also bring in entities without people even realizing that. And in my book, and I think it might be in my bio, but that is somebody that I had to help in California.
Okay.
Because her haunting was the product of, it was a drug ring in the former house. They were doing orgies and doing very heavy drugs. We're talking meth, we're talking cocaine, just the real bad stuff. But people don't realize on an energetic level that attracts very negative entities.
Oh, definitely. That's what they look for.
Yeah.
They look for, they want to find the weakest link. The weakest
You
link.
have to be
do you have
physically
a
and
copy of your
mentally
book
strong.
in front of you? Do you have a copy of your book in front of you?
No, I don't have. I'm ordering some publishers' copies soon.
Yeah. What's the name of the book?
It's called Admiring Death.
Admiring Death. How'd you come up with that title?
I love it.
Well, I wanted to call it Beauty and Death, but there was already there was already books out there with that name, so I was just basically trying to replace beauty with obviously something else. So that's how I came up with it. Because I do admire cemeteries, and I do admire the history. I admire in the architecture. It's just so fascinating to me. I love the 1700s. I think a little bit more than the 1800s, but I those are like my babies, I call them.
That's an interesting title, Admiring Death.
Yes.
So, do you fear death?
I think everyone has a healthy level of fear of death, but I really live in the moment. It's not something I'm thinking of. I'm ruminating over it. I think it is when it's my time. It's my time, and however my time, when it's up, I'm not going to waste my life thinking about it.
Yeah.
And when you cross over, where do you think you go?
Hopefully I will go into an advanced dimension. I'm hoping a happy place.
Yeah.
Well, when did you realize that? I think that you talked about this before, but when did you realize that your abilities started developing like further? And do you think that everything that we're going through now with the pandemic is having, are people coming out more because of it? If that makes any sense.
Like coming out how?
Coming out with their abilities.
I do think there's some very talented people coming out. I think, pretty much everybody, if they seriously tapped into this, everybody does have abilities. You know, this question is going to be a little bit long, but I mean, I'm a practicing pagan. So, I refer to people's God as a creator. I kind of identify a little bit more with Native American teachings. I think we have become, as a society, so removed from the creator that we have sometimes intentionally and unintentionally have driven away our gifts. So we have relied so much on other people that we've handed our intuition over to authorities. So I think people ignore their gut, which is scientifically has been proven that feelings are held in the gut. And that's why they call it a gut instinct. I don't know if people are so much staying, I don't know if they were staying silent about their abilities, but I think we are definitely in a very new energy on earth where people are not afraid to speak their truth a little more. And I do think that is an ability within itself, because when you speak your truth, you're not bound by fear.
Very true.
My abilities turned up. My husband and I moved to Arizona right after we got married. We moved out there in January of 2010. It was for his job. I thought I had abilities, living in New England. And I'm not saying that, I didn't have any, but they definitely were not as strong as moving out to Arizona. I think it was a combination of growing as a person and the type of energy that's out west. I mean, there's different rocks and minerals, a totally different landscape. So I had a lot of significant things happen on a psychic level in Arizona.
Yeah, well, you're near different energy lines, so it affects you different, and the soul's energy different. There's different points of the earth where the soul will feel at home.
Yeah.
The soul will feel at other points
So
uneasy
true.
and on edge. And sometimes it's a matter of, can you find where your soul gravitates and is more content in that part of the land? That's actually a native thing as well.
Yes.
Having said that, with all the things going on with aliens, what's your thoughts? You believe, you don't believe, you're interested, you're not interested?
My main spirit guide is an alien energy.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've heard that before.
And can you tell us about
it? So I had an awakening in 2013, and most people think a spiritual awakening is a beautiful thing, and it can be, but for me it was very traumatic. It's a little bit hard to talk about because it was information I really wasn't really ready for. I had a life coach that was not awake. She's still not awake. That has opened up she opened up all my chakras. I would not suggest anybody do that. It left me actually very susceptible to a lot of psychic attacks, and that's what happened. I had the good, bad, and the ugly energy coming out at me. I had studied a lot of psychology in college. I had to take those courses for communications. Um, I never believed in subliminal messaging before. They used to say that, was in, the radio and music in the stores, and I never believed it. I heard that in the beginning of my awakening. I can see the demonic. I can see when somebody is possessed, and I don't know what you want me to say on your show without sounding too crazy, but there's a lot of possession in Hollywood. And that's what really hurt me, because I was scared. My husband was away when all this weird stuff was happening, because he does have to travel for business. I had lights going on and off in my house. And it was a frightening few weeks. I did pray that, I needed this shut off. It wasn't until like 7 months later, when I came back to Rhode Island for our wedding, that I had to go to a Reiki healer to shut the rest of my chakras off. The energy was really intense, and I learned that our world is very different from what I thought it was. And that was hard. It was really hard. Some people, when they go through awakenings, it's just over time and information they're disseminating over the internet. I felt like I had a channel coming to my heart that just opened up the truth. And the guide, as scary as some of the stuff that this guide tells me, has all come true since 2013.
Wow.
Wow. I can relate to some of that myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
Biblical times, I think that a lot of people feeling like these are the, whether you believe in Nostradamus's predictions or what we're going through, the revelations, and we're kind of like at a point where, there's a lot of uneasiness right now within the world, but we always have to keep our vibrations up and positive. And that's one thing I like, as being a paranormal investigator myself, and the life that I've lived, is that I know, look, when this journey is over, we do go on. And I know that for a fact, not because I listen to any soul on the earth, because I just know. And that's the exciting thing, is that it's scary to know that it ends, right? It's scary and it's upsetting, but we go on. Because I tell people, I always say this, I was like, well, what do you think you were before you were born?
Yeah.
You were home. So anyway, this has been a great show. The hour has went really fast. Tell people where they can find your book, what you have going on, and all that good stuff.
Sure. So you can find my book on Amazon. I am on Instagram as CatDiva80, and the link to my book is there. I'm on Facebook, and I have an author page under Lavorie Silvia author. And I am working on my second book. So next week, actually this coming Saturday, I will be starting this book is going to be more primarily haunted cemeteries. I'll go to some very traditional haunted locations, but some of them are going to be very obscure cemeteries that people don't really know about. I am also looking into going in this book to feature Native American burial grounds, because they're calling me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So really quick, before we let you go, give me one takeaway that the reader can get from buying your book.
I think the one takeaway will actually be to not be afraid of cemeteries, and just kind of know that it's really an artistic piece of history, and it's an untold history. Everyone who's passed on before us has a story, and I can assure you that every person in the cemetery has a story.
That's
true. I like it.
Beautiful.
I like it. Thank you so much for coming on Horsefly Chronicles Radio. It's been a pleasure. Good luck with your second book.
Yes.
Thank you.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Well, we also want to thank Carnation for sponsoring the show. We love them. Thank you. And you can join us next Monday night on United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans.
Everyone, be safe. Have a great night.
Thank you,
This is a
Kat.
really great
Thank
show, and
you.
we'll catch you next Monday night, willingly and hopefully that the Earth is still here and
We'll
the
be here.
asteroids didn't hit.
Great.
Everyone, be safe. Take care.
Thank you. Good night, Kat.
Night.